amazing speakers and content, and it's only going to continue tonight and over the next couple of days. So again, appreciate everybody being on. Excited to jump in with Coach Carson here in a minute. Sorry, one second. Rookie mistake. All right. So we've started this show, Women in Sports, Erin, about 6 months ago? Yeah. Time flies, huh?
Yeah, I think we're on our 23rd, 24th week.
Crazy. So, as I was telling Coach Carson before we started, rising coaches, because I coached on the men's side and Andy Farrell and Brandon Rosenthal, just because we happen to be on the men's side, rising coaches really, that's kind of always been our biggest demographic. But over the last year, we've really made a concerted effort to cross over to the women's game because we feel like we can provide the same amount of value. What we try to do is provide relationships, resources, and opportunities. And it doesn't matter what sport, what gender, what level, those three things are invaluable regardless. So, we launched Women in Sports with that in mind to help kind of bridge the gap onto the women's side. And Erin Sinnott and Ashton Pills have done an unbelievable job with the show, and excited to kick off tonight, Women's Basketball Wednesday, with just that. So I'm going to mute my mic. I'm going to take a lot of notes and hand it over.
That's wide open, darkness closing, just stay focused, I'm not folding, I'll upset you, cause I'm just too dangerous, I'm dangerous, let's be honest, say no contest, take those comments for my concept, from the get-go, I just get so dangerous, so dangerous.
All right, everyone, welcome to Women in Sports, but also more importantly, Day 3 of the Rising Coaches Conference. Super excited to be here, be a part of the bridge of that women's basketball getting to be more distinctive and be a part of the Rising Coaches family. Kicking it off with Jackie Carson. She is a Furman Women's Basketball Hall of Famer. She is only one of 3 players with her jersey retired. She's a former professional player and now entering her 11th season as the head coach of the Furman Women's Basketball team. Jackie, thank you so much for being here.
Erin, Adam, thanks so much for having me. This is great. I love that intro video. I love that. That was pretty awesome. It was like a warm-up video. I'm pretty hyped now, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to our video and graphics. Shannon, she does everything. She puts together all of our graphics, and we definitely love it. But yeah, I was like, it feels like an intro video. It feels like season's ready. You just got out of practice. You're super juiced.
I am.
You're just talking about it. Awesome. Well, first thing we kind of dive into is just your role as a player and things like that. You played professionally. You obviously are now the head coach of a team that you formerly played for, which is awesome. What role did basketball really play in your life while you were growing up?
Well, I mean, it was huge. I come from a huge sports family, so I played a ton of sports. I am the youngest of 4, and I have 3 older brothers. So I was always trying to play some type of sport just to fit in and be able to be around my brothers, and they never took it easy on me. We were a super athletic family. My oldest brother is 6'9", and then we go 6'5", and then we call the other one the runt at 5'11", but he was the fast one, the football player. So sports have been just tremendous. It's helped me with leadership and confidence. My dad is military, so the combination of having a military family. I was born at Fort Knox. We moved all over the place. So sports combined with just having that military background were huge. The teamwork, the leadership, all of those things, just a huge impact on my life.
Yeah, definitely. What was kind of your recruiting process like? What was it like Obviously you had siblings and things like that. Were they, going through it too, or did they play at the college level, or what did that really look like? How did you pick Furman?
Yeah, so I had a very kind of unique recruiting. My dad was stationed in Kuwait during my junior and senior year of high school. So my brothers, again, military dad. So my mom just logged on, but my dad always made a rule: you either go to college or you go in the military. And so you get a nice buffer of a timeline to make a decision. So my oldest brother, he was super talented, ended up going to a couple JUCOs, but just the college life wasn't for him. So he just ended up joining the Army, and he was on the all Army team for basketball. And then my middle brother went in the military as well. And then my youngest brother, he ended up going to college, but not playing a sport. But I picked Furman. It was crazy. I had a bunch of Ivy Leagues. My visits were, I chose not to visit any Ivies, but William and Mary, I'm from Northern Virginia. I went to Washington State on a visit. I was supposed to go to Yale. And I went to Furman, and it's wild because it was the smallest. The team was not very good at the time. The gym was horrendous. And I don't know. I say to my recruits now, I don't know what it was about Furman, because obviously I just visited at the time a Pac-10 school with crazy resources. And I do remember the one thing that turned me off about Washington State, though, was that I was freezing, but I was looking at everybody walk around with shorts and flip-flops, and I was like, it means it's going to get a whole lot colder. They think this is warm. So that was not appealing to me at all, just how cold and huge the campus was. I went to a class and it was 500 people in the class, and I didn't like that. So probably just following after that, going to Furman, and the entire student body at the time was 2,500 students. And I went to a class and it was 12 people in the class. And I kind of like that small college feel, even though I'm like a big time football fan. So I love big time football, but I don't think I wanted to necessarily go to a big school, which was actually the opposite of what I thought. So it just seemed right. Came in with a big class, and it was a great decision for me.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. I feel like that was the same thing. My high school was double the size of my college, but I ended up just loving it, and definitely like tell people all the time, like it's a feeling. You have to just go and feel it for yourself and stuff like that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. But then, so you step on campus, it's small, you love it. You said you came in with a big class. What was it like for you to really, make yourself known as a player, and not just a player on the roster, but one of a huge game making player at that?
Yeah, well, just like every college player, it was really humbling because, again, like you just mentioned, I came from Northern Virginia. I played in, at the time, it was a pretty big AAU program. I don't even think it exists anymore, but great basketball, and, had pretty successful high school career. And so I came in, and just like every freshman, I thought I should have played, and I thought I should start. And, it's all the stuff that I yell at my current players for, that I had the same exact attitude. And so I had a good freshman year. I think I averaged like 10 points or so. I was a big time rebounder. That was my thing. I took a lot of pride in rebounding. And if I didn't have rebounding, I wouldn't even be known to anyone, because I was just that garbage player that loved to clean up the clean up all the garbage points. So, but I had to learn to, I had a god awful shot, but you couldn't tell me that my freshman year. My coach kept telling me, and I was like, typical thing. You recruited me on this shot. Well, I don't know why it's so bad. It goes in. I mean, I literally shot the ball with 2 hands. It was awful. But after my sophomore year, she basically said, if you keep shooting like that, you will not shoot. And so I finally just do what typical players do. I went home and worked on my shot. So again, my dad was military, so I would go every day to Quantico Marine Base, and I would work out on my shot and change my shot over the summer. And I'd play pickup with a bunch of Marines. And I think that was kind of like the turning point. I made up my mind to stop pouting and whining about, what my coach wasn't going to do, and I was going to give her a reason to not take me off the floor. That was just total mindset change. Everything was kind of the me, I'm a victim. And then I went home and I was like, okay, let me just show her why I have to be in all the time. Let me just show her, I told her, whatever position you want me to play, I'm a tweener. So I played inside out, I played guard post, wherever you want me to play, I'll play. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. I'm going to score, I'm going to rebound. So I was that player that I felt like you couldn't take off the floor. And so that's probably what gave me the most success. But I really had to change my mindset. It's the same thing I talk about with our current players. The second you change your mindset and allow yourself to be coached and allow yourself to be a great player is when your career normally takes off. So.
Yeah. And then was there during that time kind of when your mindset changed then that you wanted to coach and you wanted to do this and be a head coach one day, or when did that kind of all happen for you?
Absolutely not. I was pre-med. I was going to med school. I had no desire to coach. I never thought about coaching. My mom, like I said, is on the call. She still wanted me to probably go to med school. It's probably not happening at this point. I'm 18 years in. But I had an opportunity to play overseas. I loved it. I went to Israel 4 months after 9/11, and it was pretty crazy and it was pretty scary. And so I love playing, but I also am very I like organize, I like security. And when you play professional sports, you don't know when you're going to get cut. You don't know when you're going to leave. You don't know when you have, health insurance when you get back. You don't know anything. And I didn't like that part of it. I loved basketball. So I came back and I was getting ready. My agent was like, okay, we got a contract for Russia. And I was like, I'm not going to Russia. That did not appeal to me whatsoever. So I came back and I started, let me get my hours to go to PA school. And so I started working as a rehab assistant in Northern Virginia. And I also was a personal trainer. And then I started training a young lady that played for the Fairfax Stars organization. And she's like, hey, do you want to coach AAU? And I said, sure, I can do that. And because I never wanted to detach myself from basketball. I love basketball. I always felt like I had a coaching mind, even though I had no desire to coach. I could see things ahead of time, which is a great thing as a player. So I coached Fairfax Stars. That's when we won a national championship, when all that stuff mattered. We had some pretty high level players. And my college assistant coach, Tim Taylor, who's now the head coach at Navy on the women's side, he's like, hey, you want to coach? And I was like, no. He's like, well, Bucknell has an assistant open. And I was like, I still don't want to coach. I'm good. And he's like, no, you need to coach. And he's like, just look at it. So I ended up looking at it, and next thing I know, I'm 18 years in, and here I am back at my alma mater. So 2 years at Bucknell, 5 years at James Madison, and then going on year, gosh, what is it? God, 11 at Furman. So.
Yeah. So you didn't want to coach, and then all of a sudden now you're coaching. What was that like? Were you very hesitant towards it? Because I feel like kind of similarly to your professional career, it's a different uncertainty, but the coaching profession it's not medical. It's not being a doctor. What really was that like from the standpoint of kind of being iffy about it? Were you kind of full in when you first got there? And then how did you know that you were going to kind of keep going with it?
Yeah, well, the crazy thing is I didn't have a desire to do it, but once I said, hey, okay, let's do this. Let's see if it's something I really want to do. I completely dove right into it. So I loved it. I love, coaching. It was really weird because you learn as a coach, as everybody on this call, that the toughest thing about coaching is, what you're trying to tell your players doesn't match up with what they hear. And I'm like, how do you not know how to do that? And, it just, everybody has such a different IQ with basketball. So that was probably the biggest adjustment. I felt like I was a pretty high IQ player, and I had some pretty high IQ teammates, but that's not normal. And I didn't realize that wasn't so normal until you became a coach and you have to teach stuff. But I did love it. I really enjoyed it. There were, I think like all of us, there was a couple of times I was like, is this what I want to do? And I think mostly is because I was 24 25 years old living in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. And the only thing that's there is Bucknell and a federal penitentiary. So, I was trying to figure out if this was the right step for me. And so, but I enjoyed it. And I really fell in love with coaching and impacting lives. And it was really bigger than basketball at the end of the day. So when I had the opportunity to go to James Madison, and I was an hour and a half, about a little under 2 hours away from home, great program. We were top 25 as a mid-major, and I just like being that small fry that kind of does big things. So that really ignited me to wanting to become a head coach, especially at like a mid-major level.
Yeah. And you brought up James Madison, and you really there were able to, you were there for like 5 seasons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you were able to like really grow in the ranks. You kind of started getting more responsibilities and things like that. What from the coaching aspect, like during your time at James Madison, how were you able to do that and kind of evolve yourself and grow as a coach?
Yeah, so the cool thing about JMU is that's really where I felt like I got my identity as a recruiter. Again, I felt really comfortable teaching the game. I primarily worked with post players. I have a big passion about working with post players and developing young ladies and having them do something that they weren't able to do last year. And but the biggest thing I remember about James Madison is if you recruit some horses, you're gonna win games. And we had some horses, and so it made it a lot easier. We had some young ladies that were super passionate. So it's great to be a great coach, but if you don't get those level of players, you're never gonna excel. At the end of the day, development is great, but having some great players is the standard. So we had tremendous players. I mean, we had Don Evans at one point led the country in scoring as a point guard. We had Tamara Young, who just recently retired from the WNBA, was the first overall draft pick for the Atlanta Dream as a mid-major guard. And we just had so many like ridiculously talented kids that love to win, that love to knock off, Power Five programs and do what they need to do. So I loved that. They made me really embrace and love coaching even more because just going out and finding more young women like that really craved championships and would work their butts off to do. And they were just a fun group, and so I'm super grateful for Kenny for giving me that opportunity. Obviously now he's at Virginia Tech. But I really grew just as my relationship with student athletes, which is huge, and just really grew from seeing the game from a male perspective because my first head coach was a female. Kenny obviously played at James Madison and was a point guard. So being able to hear how to coach the game from a point guard perspective on the men's side was big because again, I grew up with all males. So it was nice to see that mentality because I grew up just watching men's basketball.
Yeah, definitely. And then just kind of with your stepping into recruiting and things like that, what was something that were kind of like your non-negotiables as a recruiter? How were you able to get these players and decipher kind of who was really a hard worker or who just talked about being a hard worker?
Yeah, and I talk about this with my staff all the time. I'm not sure when it shifted, but somewhere between my career starting 18 years ago and now is that you used to not have to recruit hard workers. They all worked hard. You just were recruiting certain skill sets and talent. Now, literally, I'm telling my staff, like, I need to recruit somebody who works hard because not everybody works hard anymore. So just identifying kids that maybe are missing a couple skill sets, but play their butts off for you. Those are the kids that we have to take every single time. And I'll admit, early in my career, I was taking that super talented kid thinking, I can make them work hard. You cannot make them work hard. They're going to be super talented at the end of the day, but they're also going to stay lazy at the end of the day and not work hard. So that's the number one thing I learned is that a lot of kids, especially early in my head coaching career, are not like the kids at JMU who it was just ingrained to work hard and to sprint every drill and to do everything full speed. Now you have to recruit that. And so that's one thing I think every coach is adapting to is that you have to recruit kids that are high energy, high effort kids, high motor kids. And so that's kind of where we've changed our standard over the last couple of years. Instead of those super talented kids, I have yet to win with those super talented kids that don't work hard. They're great scorers and they're flashy and they look good, but at the end of the day, they also cost you some games. So I will rest my hat on those kids that work hard and we can develop that will give you everything they have.
All right, pens and papers, everyone, all the notes, all the notes. Yeah, and then kind of too, something that I always like asking, especially coaches that had super successful playing careers. Do you think that is something that has really helped you and just connect with your players and things like that? Or is it also something that kind of you have to not necessarily always rely on the fact that you were a player?
Oh yeah, I hate mentioning. It's kind of like when your parents would say, well, when I was younger and back in my day, they've never seen me play except for when I play against them. And I've slowed that down because I was playing against them 3 years ago and I tore my Achilles. I had about 40 before I went down, but I feel like they took me out. So I coached half the season on a scooter because I was being on the scout team playing against my team. So um but it's I want them to find their own identity. I told them I want them to be better than me. I want them to feel like I want to feel like that my teammates and the ones that came before me, we're the foundation. You guys need to keep building off of what we did. So I had to be pretty mad if I refer to, like, it's weird because like my international kids said, Coach, you don't think it's weird that like your jersey is up? And I was like, no, I don't ever really look at it. um, I want them to build their own identity. I want them to achieve more than what I achieved. I want them to, I tell them not to look at my jersey, but to look at that championship that we have over there. That means a whole lot more than, the jersey, like, because we haven't won a championship here in a really long time. So those are hard to come by as a mid-major. So everything on the individual side will come as a result of that team side. There's not too many really, really good teams that have a championship that don't have a player like they have on the other side. So I tell them to just be better. And I don't talk about myself too much. It's really weird actually for me.
Yeah, that's great. So then you're at James Madison, you're in that associate head coaching spot. When did you know it was time to kind of, step into a head coaching? What was it like even applying to be the head coach of a school that you formerly played for?
Yeah, so I've been really fortunate that all the jobs I've had, I've never applied for. And I always am just a fond proponent of, if you just do a really, really good job of where you're at, then all the opportunities will come for you. So I've never had to go seek out a position. I remember it was like it was yesterday. We were in the NCAA tournament and and I had the scout. We were playing Temple. We had just won the CAA tournament for the first time. We were in the championship like 4 out of 5 years. We lost every championship game and we finally won one, and it was at JMU. And so it was such a surreal moment. And I walk in and we're like 3 days before we're supposed to play Temple, and our secretary is crying her eyes out. And I was like, what is wrong with you? She's like, Furman just called Kenny. And I was like, oh. And she's like, I was like, I'm not thinking about that right now. So I never was sitting there as an assistant thinking about what I was like, what head coaching job I was going to go for. My job was to make Kenny look really good and to make this program look really good. And as a result, I had various offers to become a head coach all at the same time. So, but I chose my alma mater because I felt like our success could be a little bit stronger. People were telling me it's not a good job. And of course, I took offense to, you can't tell me it's not a good job. We won there when I was there. So it just worked out. But I can't say I was necessarily looking to become a head coach. I did feel like Kenny put me in a position where I was being the most prepared, because as an assistant, I wanted my hands in everything. I was in charge of scheduling. I was the recruiting coordinator. I was in charge of the alums. The only thing I don't think I ever did as a coach was video, like film exchange. But I did academics. I did, help with the practice squad. I wanted to do everything. So that's the closest way of becoming a head coach, that I know how to do everything that this position entails. Because when you're a head coach, it's 20% basketball. It's 80% all this other madness that you have to do. You have to know how to manage donors. You have to know how to fundraise. You have to know how to manage other people, manage up, manage down. So I had a lot of practice with that because every time Kenny couldn't go to a head coach's meeting, I was like, I'll go. Every time there was a donor function, can I go with you? So it was pretty cool. So I think that's the biggest thing, is not being so anxious to be like, oh, I want to be a head coach, but are you preparing yourself to be a head coach by trying to put yourself in as many situations that the head coach is in?
Yeah. And then even along the way, were you just kind of compiling notes and obviously getting all of that experience? So then when the time came, like you did really feel confident about it?
I don't think you can ever feel totally confident about it. I remember I stood up for my first time out, or just stood up for the first time. I was like, holy smokes, this is different. Like it's you hear it all the time. It's something different about sitting 19 inches to the next seat. Um, so I don't know if you can truly be prepared. It's kind of like parenthood. Like no matter what you do, when that baby comes, it's a completely different life. But I mean, like I said, I did everything I thought I could do, but you're never truly prepared because your team is never going to be truly like the team you just left. Um, Kenny and I are different styles of coaching. I'm real low key. My college coach was a yeller, and I just tuned her out all the time. So I just never had a desire to become that type of coach. Um, so I feel like I'm pretty low key. I will look at you slam crazy all the time. I don't yell much. I am very demanding. I like certain attention to detail. Um, but I never felt like, okay, I'm ready. But I felt like I knew I could do it. So I knew I was going to take some bumps and bruises along the way, and I was going to have some success along the way. And I just need to learn from my mistakes. And I've made plenty of mistakes. I'm still making mistakes, and I'm still learning from them. So I don't think anyone ever is going to be ready, but I think you can prepare yourself as much as possible before you take on the role.
Yeah. That 19 inches reference, I felt like a head coach there. I was like, wow, that's like, that really is. Cause you are used to just like kind of following the lead and being that person like next to them and supporting them. But yeah, that was a good one. So yeah, so you now then become the head coach of Furman, and you're stepping into, obviously there's old recruits, things like that. Where did you start? Like what was the plan? How were you then able to, you know, build a culture and start making things your own?
Yeah, it's funny because I built a culture, and then I didn't like that culture anymore. And so halfway between is when I had to build a completely different culture, because I realized that, like you mentioned, when you become a head coach, I just remember going to clinics, and I would write down everything at a clinic. And so I was like, oh, I like that drill. I like that drill. And I like that drill. And I was trying to do all of them, and none of them matched. Like none of them went together, but it was like, oh, that's a good drill. But that was a really good drill for Creighton men's basketball. I do this drill. That's a really good drill for Notre Dame women's basketball. But none of them were good drills for Furman women's basketball. And I kept trying to do them because, well, I'm going to emulate what Notre Dame's doing. I'm going to emulate what this school is doing. But I didn't have those players to be able to emulate, and nor did I have that style of play. So so early on, I was trying to put in way too much. We had a million plays, 200 presses, 200 defenses, and we weren't good at any of it because it was so much. And so I just kept hearing simplicity, simplicity, and so we just really dialed everything down. And in terms of culture, we had a different saying every year. Like you could ask our kids, what is, coach really passionate about? And they probably couldn't tell you, because this year it'd be this, and this day it'd be this. And, it'd be a different tune this year and a different motto that year. And again, simplicity is everything. And if you can't walk into a gym and see what that team is all about, then you really have not set a core value or standard or a culture for that program. And I had to learn that super late. So then finally it just came to, I sat down one day at my desk and I was like, well, if people were to describe me as a coach, like the players that know me best and the coaches that know me best, what are the words that they would say, about me? Or what are the constants that I always say, no matter how I'm saying it? And that's how we came up with our culture. So our culture of be distinct, it's on everything that we do. Um, it's everything on social media, and it's an acronym for everything that, you know, initially I stand for, but now all of my assistant coaches, my players, and it's discipline and integrity, selflessness, transparency, or together, depends on what mood I'm in for that one. Intensity, integrity are the I's, no excuses, commitment, and trust. So everything that we do is, I mean, today our word in practice was integrity. We did a lot of teaching today and we had a lot of drill work. So in the drill work, hey, when I'm not looking at you, are you still doing all the things? Or are you changing what you're doing when I'm not looking? So what type of integrity are you having in the drill? So we apply those words every single time. We have a quote that's associated with every single word. So we'll say, at the beginning of practice, what's integrity? And they all will say the quote. And I actually stole that from University of North Carolina women's soccer coach, because he has an acronym and words that are valued to him. And he's won more national championships than a lot of people. And so I was like, well, if his team can learn some quotes, then certainly ours can, to back up our acronym. So it has been great. Everything, any one of our players can walk into this gym. They'll tell you what distinct is. We don't want to look like any other team. We want to stick out from the rest for the right reasons. You'll go on the other side of campus. Our AD is like, you guys are looking distinct today. Like, everybody says it all the time. So you know what our culture is about. There's no guesses. I'll say that doesn't look very distinct today. Like, where's your trust? And they'll say to each other, yo, where's your trust today? We're not playing like together. You're not being distinct. So that is when you know your culture is evolving and it stays constant. When we had one that changed all the time, the first 6 weeks, oh, we were on it. We were a book club. We'd have this, and then it would just drift off. Like, nobody ever mentioned what it was. We were just saying the quote, but it had no substance behind it. Everything we do right now, it has substance behind it. It's what we believe. It's what we do in the classroom. And so that's what really had to drive our culture, was being consistent with preaching it. They can't practice what they don't hear is being preached. And so that's the one thing I had to learn, is stop trying to change everything all the time. Be as simple as possible. And that's paid off for us the last few years.
Yeah. How long do you think it really took for you to try to build these different things, realize that they weren't working, and then really just figure out what was going to be best for you guys?
Yeah, I would say I'm going on year 11. It probably took me 5-6 years to I was just changing it and just trying to figure it out and asking other coaches, what are you doing? And I just remember talking to someone, they're like, what did you do? What was your constant? I was like, I just worked hard. I just didn't have any excuses. I just committed. Whatever my coach told me to do, I just did it. I may not always liked it. I just did it, and then we would talk about it in our head, and she would challenge me all the time. And so that's what I realized, those things that drove me as a player. I wasn't driving my kids to do it. I had a relationship with them, but as far as driving those forces on the court, I wasn't doing a good enough job of instilling that in them. So they would go out and they'd learn the plays, but there was no substance. We had talented young ladies in our program, but I didn't feel like I did a great job of setting the standard for our program. And if you don't set the standard, it's kind of like, I know everybody in here knows John Gordon, and he talks about the root and the fruit all the time. We had no root. We had a tree that would bear some fruit early, but when times got tough, when the storm came through, the tree fell over all the time because we just didn't have any roots. And so now I feel like we have a pretty firm root system. Our roots are getting stronger. Players that graduate know, and hey, coach, that was distinct, and they're still tweeting it to be distinct. And it's just it's a part of our culture, and it's growing and it's getting stronger. So now we're bearing more fruit in our program.
Yeah, that's incredible. Also something that we kind of chatted about before, because obviously women in sports, we really pride ourselves off of this is your platform. We're advancing the narrative for all of us. You talked a lot about diversity in coaching and the importance of your players seeing someone like them in not only a head coaching position, but just a coaching position in general. Can you kind of talk about that and the impact that it's had?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everybody can tell over 50% of the women's basketball world are Black female student athletes. But yeah, 17% of us are head coaches, so it's really important for me to not only excel in this opportunity that I have to lead my alma mater, but to show our young ladies that, I can do it. So when you're done with your playing career, if you want to coach, you can do it too. And this is how. And this is how you need to get it done, because they don't see a lot of examples. I can't tell you too many coaches that I looked up to when I was a player and saw that looked like me, and so and we had one in our league and we had C. Vivian Stringer, but I honestly probably can't name another Black female head coach while I was playing, and the WNBA slowly came out when I was in high school. And so I just don't remember anyone ever seeing like me. So I feel like I have the responsibility of showing not only my players, but any players in college basketball that you can be a Black female and you can excel and you can do it at a predominantly white institution, and you can represent, and you can have a lasting impact. Being here 11 years is definitely been a blessing, and we need to promote it. I feel like I have to do well so that there are other opportunities for other Black females to become head coaches. That's just part of it. That's just part of the weight that I carry. Like, I have to do well because it then shows that other people can come behind me. And it's a very superficial statement, but it's true. So we need more diversity. I want to show our young women on our teams that they can be coaches. I want to show our young coaches in the community they can be head coaches. It does take some hard work. I admit my path was way shorter than what most were. I was a head coach after 7 seasons. Like I said, 2 at Bucknell and 5 at James Madison. It's not like that anymore. It's very rare. But I think that diversity is huge. I'm a part of a Women of Color Head Coaches Network. It's about 35 women of color head coaches. Phenomenal program. We support each other. We just did a mentoring session with about 35 young college women, Black female head coaches, where we're just trying to empower them and let them know that we're available to just be able to grow. Because again, like I said, over 50% of our athletes are Black, but 17% we have 17% women, Black women as head coaches in NCAA. So it's just a tough narrative, but we're working through it, and we're going to figure out how ways to increase those numbers and be more successful.
Yes, I definitely think leading by example for sure. Like, I didn't have a female head coach until my senior year of college. And I just know that she saved me. Like, she just pulled something out of me that I was like, wow, okay. Like, by her telling me that I could have a career in athletics and things like that was really the turning point for me. And it doesn't also discredit all of the amazing men too that have really like locked arms. Like you talked about James Madison, head coach there, like he, gave you responsibilities and elevated you. And then when the time was right, he let you go and do it yourself. So I think that's super incredible. But yeah, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit before we open things up for questions. We do have a few questions, so stay on your toes.
All right.
But yeah, so who just continues to constantly, push you and inspire you to go through this journey as a head coach, a mother, a wife, balancing all those things?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's my girls. I have 2 little girls that absolutely think I have the biggest job. Like, they would not have a clue who Gino is. In their eyes, I'm Gino. And it is really cool at times. It's kind of annoying other times, because I'll go in and pick them up and there's a bunch of little girls and they're wide eyed and they're like, "That's your mom." And I'm like, "What did y'all tell them?" And but it's really cool to see them just love sports. So my oldest daughter, London, is 9, and she's an awesome soccer star right now. And then my youngest daughter, Lathan, is about to turn 7 tomorrow. So literally, when I get off this Zoom, I'm about to become a Pinterest mom. I have to go home and make the yard sign and the individually packed COVID cookies now, because nothing can be, that's changed the whole thing. Then we got to get ready to make sure to have a special day for her. So it's they inspire me. My husband is my biggest supporter. You see, like I said, my mom is on this call. My family is phenomenal. My girls really drive me to keep after it because it really reminds you that there's young people watching and that there's folks that are really just fascinated by what you do. And I love that. So I have a great support system. Michelle Clark Hurd, who's going to be one of the next speakers, is probably my closest friend in the business, and she drives me, and we bounce things off of each other. And then Corey Close is another speaker tonight. Just two amazing women that are. Corey, I joke with Erin, I said, is my work wife. We're on NCAA oversight and 6 million committees together, and they really stretch me from a personal standpoint. They support me spiritually. They've helped guide me when I feel like I'm going stray, and they're just a great support system. So there's my Women of Color network. There's many. But going back to your last point, Erin, about the males in the business, I feel like I need to drive women of color, but the reason I'm in this business is a white male, and he's the most influential. Tim Taylor is the most influential coach I've ever had, and so the males, you guys, what you can do to open these doors for young women is phenomenal. So just continue to drive that, and like I said, I wouldn't be here without him. So
Yes, I love that. What advice can you really give women wanting to be successful in a career as well as having a family and, being a mom and balancing all of that?
yeah, it truly takes a village and a support system, but it is very doable. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. I thought that for the longest time. I didn't get married until right before I became a head coach. I didn't have kids until I was a head coach, and I felt like I can't have kids. And I just thought in my mind, I can't have kids and be an assistant coach. You can. Um, you have to find that balance of finding a boss that supports your family life. There was one very good job that ended up not taking because I went on the interview, and I remember talking to someone, the person that was leaving that I would have replaced. And I said, "Why are you leaving?" And she said, let's just say, she said, "Do you want to start a family?" And I said, "Absolutely." She said, "If you had a doctor's appointment for your child and there was a recruit on campus, you would have to be with that recruit." And so I knew that that wasn't the right place for me. And so you're not going to be able to take every single job, and every situation won't be the right situation for you. So just know that it is doable, it is feasible, it is exhausting, but being a mom has made me a way better head coach because now I can see through the lens of a parent of how I would like my child treated. So when I'm in practice and I'm trying to coach up my players, I can also see it in the lens of being there. I call him the mommy coach. I have mommy rules. Um, but it really made me put a lot of this job in perspective, not going home mad and focusing on all the negative things that happen in the game, win or lose, not burying myself in film the entire time, really being able to detach and have a well-balanced life. So I didn't burn out by the end of the season. I think all of those things are huge, but it is completely doable. It's so much fun to have your family involved. I had a great administration. Your administration supports it. My kids didn't miss very many games. I think before they started school, London maybe missed 3 games, my oldest, and my youngest missed one. They traveled everywhere. We made sure the buses had seat belts, their car seats were snapped in, and we rolled. My trainers, my practice players, my players that were hurt. It really was a village, but I didn't miss anything. If anything, they have seen more gyms in the country than most kids. They've been traveled all over the place. We played in Cancun. They rolled to Cancun. Um, it was just really cool. So they always feel like grow up with about 15 big sisters. And that also helps me with recruiting because I'm not going to bring any more bad kids in my program that are going to be around my kids. So I think it's balanced out both sides.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely incredible. Just one last thing, then we'll go to questions. What mark do you really want to leave on your coaching staff and your players as a head coach?
Yeah, so my thing, I've had really great assistants, and I lose really great assistants all the time. But I feel very proud in the fact that they all are moving on to either being. I've had a huge amount of assistants move on to be head coaches, and I've had a lot move on to be Power Five. It's my job, as much as it is to build up these players, is to build up my assistants. I got all but one that want to be a head coach. And so it's my job to prepare them. And I take that very serious. There's a lot of questions. What would you do if you're a head coach right here? You know, oh, I'm not good at that. You can't say you're not good at that, because you're going to have to do that when you're a head coach. So we shift duties around to make sure that whenever they want to have their portfolio, that they have that listed in their portfolio. What do you want to do right now that you're not doing? Um, a lot of times I'll sit and watch their individuals and I just write down stuff about them. I think it was Sherry Cole about 4 years ago. She said, a lot of people watch film just to see what their team is doing. I'm watching film of myself. I learned to do that a lot, to see what body language I'm giving out on the sideline. If I'm feeding my team energy, how I can be better. Because I am a big proponent of that. I don't sometimes, since I've been doing that, I didn't know that, I'm dropping my shoulders or dropping my head after a play, the same things that we yell at our students to do. We got to make sure that we're not doing that as coaches. So that took an opportunity to kind of look in the mirror and grow from that. But I just want to leave a mark of just making sure they leave here better, and knowing that they can always depend on me. I'm there when I need, when they need me. I just want to empower. I want them to feel powerful once they leave. I want them to feel like they can change the world. And if they need any help along the way, then I'm always there.
Well, I'm sure your players do feel that way. I certainly feel that way. I hope people on this call do too. Yeah, you're incredible. And then, yeah, we're going to open up to just some questions. Justin, if you don't mind introducing yourself and asking your first question for Coach Carson. Oh, I think you're on mute. No worries. Always.
Oh, thanks, Erin.
You're good.
Hey, Coach Justin Maidenberg from Santa Monica College. So what skill set from your military background did you feel like transferred over to your coaching style? And then what do you think you thought would have transferred over but didn't work out that well?
Oh, yeah. Great question. So be on time. Lord knows, don't be late. My dad does not just be on time. Discipline is the number one thing. Just the respect of who you're talking to. Like, it's still weird for me to even call our current parents by their first name. And I'm starting to be older than some of our current parents, but it's just always Mr. and Mrs. And, that respect thing, replying yes, yes, ma'am, when it's necessary. I always just wanted to feel like our players are respected by me as much as I want to be respected by players. So that definitely carried over. Missing the mark. Well, when you grow up in a military background and around military families, because like I said, I lived on bases for the most part, everyone around you was disciplined. And so that's not true in coaching. There's many times when people say stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, did everybody just hear what she just said? Like, that just wouldn't fly in our house or just in any other military surrounding, but it's not quite a big deal to everybody else. So just the expectation that everybody else is as disciplined as you was probably what was a little tough in coaching. So just the discipline and being on time, and just the lack of discipline is probably the biggest thing that was hard to transfer over, I guess. That's a great question.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Justin.
Great question. Coach Matt, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for taking some time to speak with us. My name is Matt Elkin. My question for you, so a lot of coaches, especially coaches on the men's side, we work with young people that might be coming from single parent homes. And a lot of times that kids are raised by strong women, moms. And so we serve the role almost as a father or an older brother or an uncle to some of these young men. Have you experienced anything in your career, coaching wise, where it's maybe been the opposite, where you have young women who maybe didn't have a mother or somebody where you had to fill that role? Or do you feel like almost all the time you're having to be mom to your kids and then also mom to the young women that you're coaching?
No, I think you hit it exactly, Matt. I feel like in recruiting, I give our parents comfort by saying, okay, when they're here, I'm mom, so they're going to be taken care of. They're going to be looked after like they're my own child, because we have international kids that are 26 hours from home. We have kids that are right down the street. We have, kids that are 7 hours. And I find a great deal of comfort when one of our kids is crying their eyes out and their mom says, well, did you go talk to Mama Carson? And so then that kid turns around. When moms are referring their own kids to me, then I feel like that level of comfort is there, and that relationship that I also have with my student athlete is there. So I've definitely had it, even when the parent is in the home. And then I do feel like that role is elevated for anyone. I haven't had very many players whose moms are not involved in their life. I've had many whose dads are not. So kind of partnering with that other parent has always been, and supporting them, because regardless of which parent's not in the home, it is such a heavy burden for those kids. I've had a ton of kids, as soon as they got in college, their parents split. So it was almost like they were the youngest and the parents were like waiting to separate. And so, I mean, literally, I had one kid whose parents split on the way home and like called her when they got home and said, hey, this is not going to work out anymore. And I was like, well, that was horrible. Like, you could at least gave me a couple of weeks to, build a relationship. But coaches do play that role. And whether it's you being the father figure or you being, for the females, being that mother figure, that relationship must be built early in order to give not only that player that comfort of knowing that they can come to you for whatever the reason is, but also if the parent is still in that child's life, giving that parent some comfort that you're taking care of their child. So I think that's something you have to build immediately in the recruiting process. And then a lot of times when you might get that kid, you have to continue to build that. And like, there's some coaches that recruit the heck out of a kid, and then as soon as that kid signs, they disappear. I think that's when you lose a lot of kids. You have to continue to build that relationship. If not, that's probably where you're going to lose a lot of kids, because they don't feel you as being very genuine. But just continually building that relationship, it involves a lot of work and effort. But if you don't do it, it harms your team in the long run. So continue to be that figure for all your male players. It's gonna, you're gonna change lives.
Thank you.
No, thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Anybody else have any more questions? Feel free to jump in. All righty. Well, if not, Coach Carson, thank you so much. You're incredible. Thank you for sharing your mistakes and what makes you such a great head coach. Super excited to see what this season has in store, and best of luck.